Hello friends, it's Tanya with Tinkering and Ink with Tanya, and today I am here with the last Crafty Friends blog hop. It has been a fun ride, guys. We are doing Picket Fence Studios as our last featured company, and I am using the Franken Friends stamp set. This is such a fun stamp set. I had to have it. It sold out immediately when it came out, and it took a little while for me to get my own copy of it. I do adore it. I believe it came out in August, and we are in late September now. I am going to use my Distress Oxide inks to create a background using, oh, what is this? Is this Wilted Violet and Mowed Lawn and Chip Sapphire? So I just use my blending brushes that are in those color families, and I'm going to do two cards. I'm going to do a 5x7 card and a Slimline card. And I am shopping my stash for all kinds of goodies to go along with this stamp set. You do have to be a little careful when you are blending green and purple. They do make a bit of a muddy color. But since we're going with this creepy Halloween-y theme, that doesn't really bother me at all. I'm going pretty heavy-handed with this 5x7 card panel that I'm going to cut down later for the 5x7 card. I do want super rich color behind this one, and we'll go a little lighter with the Slimline one. Almost done here. I almost cut a lot of this blending out, but you know, sometimes it's nice to watch somebody else do the blending. See if they have any tips. I don't really have any tips. I just keep blending, and I tend to be rather heavy-handed. I like the rich color. I could have made this a little less work for myself by starting out with a colored cardstock. The Distress Oxides work very well on colored cardstock, and if you guys are like me, I have quite a stash of colored cardstock. I've been using primarily white cardstock for quite some time now, and coloring it with because I love to blend. I love to blend. Not often do I do a card without doing some blending. So this time I am using just the ink that's on the brush primarily. I do think I have to pick up a little more ink with one of these colors. I think it might be the Chip Sapphire. And I am going for a very nice light blend. I do think I end up coming back with a little more ink later, but we shall see. Ooh, I just had to chase my dog out of the room. She came in from outside, and she definitely smells like all of my allergens. I don't need to be coughing. So I do find that I need to add a little more ink to this brush, because the blue is just not really, I'm working it, but I just need a little more ink. So I'm just going to keep going back and adding. Now for this one, usually when I do ink blending, I just go directly from the ink pad to the paper. But since I'm trying to do this a little lighter, I am tapping it off on my scrap paper before I come to the cardstock. I am going to add some pearlized water. I do this for just about everything because I just love how it looks. And I don't know if most people remember that there's a windmill involved in the Frankenstein story. And when I remembered that I had this beautiful windmill stamp from the Brutus Monroe inspiration kit for August called Whirling Windmills, which you can buy separately. And no, I'm not an affiliate for him either, but I will provide a link in the description box below this video. I'm stamping it with VersaFine Onyx black ink on the background of these cards. I was going to do more than one on this 5x7, but I decided to just stick with one image. On the Slimline version, though, I'm going to stamp this partially 3 times. And I just keep it in the same spot in my MISTI and re-ink it and move the cardstock around to get the multiple different images. This way, if it didn't stamp perfectly, I can go back and stamp it again to get a perfect image. However, with the VersaFine Onyx Black, you're virtually guaranteed to have a beautiful impression the first time, unless you didn't ink the stamp completely. That's happened to me. Yeah, that would be more user error. And I do like that we can adjust placement before you close the lid completely. This stamp does have two windmills in it, a larger one on the left and a smaller one on the right, which is perfect. Again, I do use my clear embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, the Icicle embossing powder. And I realize that this is supposed to be about Picket Fence Studio. However, this Franken cute stamp set is amazing. There are so many adorable stamps on Picket Fence. And I wish I could own every single stamp that I adore and still have room in my house. Yeah, or money in my bank account. I think we all struggle with that a little bit. It's hard to pick and choose. There's so many beautiful stamps out there, so many ideas. And I have just scratched the surface with this stamp set. And I am really enjoying the Halloween type stamps. I think I collect them more than I actually use them. I'm going to try and change that. And they don't have to say Happy Halloween. We can be sending them all through the fall, probably from August through, well, the end of October. Or to anyone who loves that kind of theme, you could send them year-round. Why limit ourselves? They're so fun. So now I am stamping, what am I stamping? Oh, haha, our star of the show, Mr. Frankenstein. I am stamping this with Hero Art's Intense Black ink on some 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock. And I do stamp this 2 or 3 times to get a good solid impression. There are a lot of solid areas on this stamp. And this is the first time I was using this stamp. I did stamp it twice, once for each card. And now I am heat setting it to make sure that it doesn't smear when I am using my Copic colors. And I will have the names of the Copic markers that I use on this stamp set in the upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner of the video here. I'm taking the darkest color of green and going over the, again, very well placed marks by the artist that help you decide where shading should be. And I'm just going over those with the darkest marker first. While this is a large surface, it really doesn't take me very long. I think it took me 10 minutes to do both of these card fronts, both of these Frankenstein images, and I'm coloring them both the same way. You could color them with a whole lot of different color ways. You don't have to do green, but that is the color I wanted to use. So I'm using my mid-tone next and just going over the areas I've already done the darkest tone with. And this is actually going to cover most of our Frankenstein. Got to get those nice bags under his eyes, those deep shadows in the hollows of his cheeks. And I wanted his lips to be a bit darker also, so they're going to get a lot of the mid-tone green. The ears are almost completely the mid-tone green. And the neck is going to be just the darkest 2 colors. It really does help when the artist makes all of these shading lines for us. Then I'm just going to go back in with the lightest green and finish this off. When you have a larger image like this, it's a lot easier to use more than 2 colors for shading. And you could actually go another step. You could go 4 colors to shade this fella if you are super good at Copic coloring, which I'm not. I am a basic to intermediate level, and I don't know if I ever will improve. I imagine over time, but I haven't taken the effort to go through the class lessons that I've purchased. Yeah. I keep saying, oh, when I have more time, but there's never enough time. There's always more things that I want to play with, and I just want to play. So I guess I just need to start challenging myself when I'm coloring a little more. And you can challenge yourself too. This fella, even though he's so large, don't let the size of this image intimidate you. He is super easy to color in. Look at that. It didn't take me hardly any time at all. When you have such a large image to color in, it is even easier to do because you don't have to be so tiny careful. I do add a little bit of one of the toner grays in the eyes. I am going to add some clear Wink of Stella over the metal parts, and I think I put that on his eyes too, just to add a little spooky quality to this. And then I am going to fussy cut this fella. Again, not difficult. There is not a matching die. You don't have to have matching dies for every image as much as we would like to. It sure saves a little money when you don't buy the matching die. If you're anything like me, if there is a matching die, I am going to buy it. Yep. You don't have to. I know a lot of people don't. Fussy cutting is not that hard. It's just not something that I love to do. I do like to use my die cut machine. Plus, I'm less likely to mess it up. Although, hey, you know, one of the benefits to fussy cutting is that you don't have it all lined up, run it through the die cut machine, and have it be off just slightly. I am going to leave in some of the not completely colored edges. I like how that blends out. Now I'm going to use the Trinity Stamps Wonky Stitched Slimline die here to cut that out for the Slimline card, and I used my favorite A7 card, or excuse me, die set from Honeybee Stamps. That's the A7 double stitched rectangles, and I love the stitching detail. Going to take some coaster blank, and I am going to glue that to the back of my fussy cutted Frankenstein, and I am leaving this in for once. Every time I leave this bottle sit for a little bit, I do have to use the long pin that comes with the Barely Art Precision Glue to unclog it. It just takes a second. It's not difficult. And then it's right back in business. I do have to trim down another piece, the convenient part here, while it's sitting under the block. I can test fit whatever I'm using or whatever pieces I'm trying to create. I took some coaster blanks and put those on the back of the 5x7 card piece. We are not going to do that with the Slimline because it is exactly the same size as the card base, which is a 7 by 8.5 inch piece of white cardstock, scored at 3.5 inches to create this side fold Slimline card. And that wonky stitched rectangular Slimline die is exactly 3.5 by 8.5. You can see it's a little bit warped from the die cutting. I just put my MISTI on top of that long enough to do what I'm doing right now, which is probably 30 seconds, and it's nice and flat. I'm going to glue the 5x7 die cut piece for the panel to the front of the 5x7 cardstock. Back to the Slimline, when you do the 7 inch by 8.5 inch piece from an 11 by 8.5 inch cardstock, then you have your panel for the front of the card right there. Super convenient. I love that. There's very little waste. It's a little bigger than you need. I do place my little Frankenstein face here, and then I really wanted him off to the side, just enough so he isn't overhanging. And then we're going to do the same with our other Frankenstein. Just going to take, this is coaster blank out of my scrap drawer, which is getting kind of full again. Need to start using that predominantly again. because I have a hard time throwing away any of the coaster blanks because I do trim it down to put behind things all the time for dimension. Again, where I get these is linked in the description box below, and again is not a affiliate link. Now we're going to use some of these absolutely fantastic sentiments from the stamp set. Wow, she did a fantastic job with this stamp set. This one says, this is the image, or excuse me, the sentiment we're going to put on the front of both of these cards. It's different sentiment for each one. And there are so many options on this stamp set. Oh, I love it. So I'm going to use some black cardstock. I'm not sure which black this was. It was from my scrap bin. I'm using Versamark ink embossing ink to stamp these more than once because I want them to have a nice crisp image for the embossing. We're using some alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. Yes, I have a lot of Brutus Monroe embossing powders. I really like them. And we're going to heat set these quick with my heat tool. Get them nice and melted and shiny. I have pretty much decided that I love the Hero Arts and the Brutus Monroe embossing powders the most. And I have a giant drawer full of embossing powders. I'm just going to buff off the cornstarch from my embossing, my embossing buddy, my homemade one, which is a sock with some cornstarch in it. And here I'm using the Nested Banners dies from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm going to do some partial die cutting here because this die is just a little longer than I need, but it is the right width. The trick here is making sure that your edges are back in the same track they were when you cut the first part so that you don't get a funny edge. And there's that one. And this one does not fit in any of the dies I found, combined with the scrap of cardstock that I stamped it on. So I'm going to fussy cut the sentiment. I must be getting used to fussy cutting. I wouldn't have done this a few months ago, but I really do love the effect of a fussy cut or die cut sentiment. So maybe that's part of it. I really like this look. So I just quickly zip through that. It really doesn't take very long. I only have this video set at double speed, so it's taking twice as long as you're seeing. I'm going to trim down some more coaster blank to put behind part of each of these sentiments. They're going to be the same height as the Frankenstein image, just adding one little tidbit on the bottom of this where that hangs down on the Y, and we'll glue that on quick, and I'll put a acrylic block on top just to keep that down nice and tight. That wasn't a super heavy black cardstock I used, so it tends to have a little bit of a curl to it if you don't put a heavy block on it when you glue it down. Sorry about all the throat clearing. Doggone dog. I love her very much, but her fur holds on to all of the allergens in the air, and when she comes in from outside, it's especially bad. Oh well. Now we are going to stamp the sentiments on the inside of the card, just putting them on an acrylic block. And since I haven't used these stamps before, I do like to condition them a little bit by running my hands over them, removing any of the factory stuff that might be on them, and just getting them ready for the ink. I'm using VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I am stamping this a fun one on the inside of that card. And then we are going to stamp probably my favorite sentiment out of this set, which is just send candy, all will be fine. I love it. Love it. So I pulled out of my stash something I finally broke down and bought last year, and I don't think I used it more than a couple times. It's the glow-in-the-dark Nuvo drops. And this is apple green, I believe it's called. And it looks very green and holds that very green color even when it dries. However, it did pick up this creepy look when it completely dried. The very edges of the dots got a little purple on the purple area and a little bit of blue on the blue area. It looks cool. It works for Halloween. I have a bunch of close-up photos here so that you can see the detail on all of these cards. I hope you enjoyed this card or these cards. Be sure to head on over to Picket Fence Studios on the 20th and 21st of September to get 20% off if you use our coupon code and go through one of the links from our crafty friends. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please take time to do that now and leave me a like. Leave me a comment. I love to hear from you. And be sure to stop by again soon. Bye-bye.